All right, we're recording. Welcome everyone to the July 26, 2018 Helm Developer Call. For anybody who doesn't know, I will share in chat the meeting minutes, agenda stuff. So the way we normally go through this is we do announcements, stand up, and any discussion. So I think the only announcement we have is we finally finished the move over from all the Helm repos to the Helm org. I think we finished that after the last meeting. So there's redirects in place for everything, but that's one of the things that we did. Does anybody have any other announcements? All right, sweet. Let's go to stand up. So a stand up, I'll kick it off and throw it to Mr. Butcher.
I was issue Sherpa this week, so I've been trying to stay on top of the issue queue. Merged a couple of PRs, and of those, couple of them are features. So we will have some new features coming out in the next 1.11 release. And then on the Helm 3 stuff, Brian Hardock, who's not here this morning, also on my team, he and I spent some time going through some of the Lua design yesterday. So that stuff is moving along. Adam has been, I'll tell you what Adam's been doing. Adam's been working on getting the Kubernetes 1.11 stuff completed, but he didn't get it finished in time for his vacation. So we're probably out another, well, I guess whatever the RC candidate right now, is that ready? I'm not totally sure. I should have asked Fisher. I didn't know he was going to be sick today. So, but anyway, yep. So it was a good week, pretty productive, busy issue queue. I will hand it off to Josh.
Okay, I have not much to add. I've been trying to keep up with the emailing list votes and all that. But have been busy this week, so not much to add. I do want to have a big discussion about repo authentication. There's been a lot of activity around that. Not so much activity as much as people asking, "How do I do this?" And I don't know the answer, so that's about it. Let's see, Taylor.
Hey, so I didn't get to do much this week due to some vacation. I will be working on a bunch of PR stuff tomorrow. That is my plan for this week, and some probably a little bit more PR stuff the next week, just trying to clear that out. I did finally clear out my backlog of responses and things, so that was an accomplishment. But yes, that's where I'm at. Who hasn't gone yet? Nick.
Hey guys, so I've been away all this last week on a worldwide all hands thing that our team's been doing. So been busy with that, looking to get back into the flow with issues and PRs and all of that this week. So, and I will pass it on to Justin.
Yeah, I was out at vacation at the Gorge watching the most awesome band in the world. So I have done absolutely nothing. But I plan to kind of tie up, you know, as Taylor said, my personal backlog is what I'm going to be working on as far as the issue queue and stuff, and trying to get people I've left hanging, try to get some of them taken care of. Is that everything?
I think I'm the last one then.
Oh.
I think. For myself, I've been trying to figure out, a couple of things. First, I forgot there was an announcement. The distributed search proposal passed. The time period's up, it passed. So we'll be going down the distributed search thing. I guess I can grab a link and throw it in here in a minute. As for myself, I've been trying to figure out how do we switch from the CLA to the DCO, because that passed recently, and we need to figure out the logistics of it, specifically to the charts repo and the merge automation. There's a few things going on. There's some label setting we need to do around the DCO and still respect the existing ones that are under the CLA. I've written up a blog post that a few folks are reviewing to just announce it. But working on the logistics of that is one of the things that I need to keep working on and figure out. I've been talking with Chris over at the CNCF. So there's a little bit of automation we need layered on there that doesn't exist. And then there is when we left the Kubernetes org, we lost the sizing, the automatic sizing that went on. And I've been working on figuring out how do we bring that sizing back. And I said, okay, we can just bring Kubernetes back, or we could use Probot for anybody who's familiar with Probot and write something for Probot. And so I went and I asked the CNCF, is this something the size is something that they would want to use? Or should we just go back and use the Kubernetes stuff? And I think Chris is going to try and chase down creating that in his travels and write it himself because the code's pretty simple. It's like less than 200 lines of Go. And so he's going to go take a shot at it and see about doing Probot, so more projects than just Kubernetes can use it. And I might look at that for the labeling stuff as well. I'm poking at that as well. Because some of these things are great and Kubernetes has them, but you've got to sign up for all the Kubernetes-isms in order to get it, including their bot and their automation and config in their repos. And so we're looking for simpler ways to do this that may be useful even just beyond us. And I've been poking at that. I've also been working on the update notification a little bit. How can we notify people that there's an update to Helm for them? That kind of stuff. Okay, that's what I've been up to. Did we get everybody? Oh, sorry, Matt, you had one more announcement. That's right.
Yeah, forgot to announce we had voted Remus into an emeritus contributor position last week, but then didn't announce it till this week. For those of you who don't know Remus, he was one of the original creators of Helm, but then ended up being called away to work on other things for a while. But we wanted to make sure that he was also recognized as one of the emeritus members. So that was announced this last week.
All right. Okay, I think that's all the core maintainers. Oh, wait, did Brian? Did we get everybody?
Yeah, I don't have anything this week.
Yeah, all right. Okay, cool.
I filled them in on that you and I had been chatting about Lua for Helm 3 yesterday, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's my update too.
Cool. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add before we move into the discussions? All right. There's 3 discussion topics right now. I added 2 of them. The first one was from Michelle, who's not here, but it looks like she has a question. Can folks, non-core maintainers, add and remove labels on Helm repo right now? And the answer should be no. The core maintainers and the Helm org maintainers are the only folks with that access, I believe.
Didn't used to be that way. Because I've seen people apply issues, but the labels.
They've used the bot. I think they've used the bot for that. That was like before we had the Kubernetes bot stuff in there. I remember that only the core
they behind bug and stuff, and we have 2 different bug labels, and it would be confusing.
Yeah.
There was also a case where people who had access on Kubernetes to label were able to label Helm. So every once in a while, somebody would label things that way too.
Yeah, the automation that was in place allowed a lot of people to apply labels to repos under Kubernetes. And so that applied to Helm and all of that stuff as well. If this is the kind of thing with that automation that we want to bring back, how much of it we do. In fact, we should probably also talk about, we touched on it in the list, but they'll issue automation because we lost that as well. All right, so that's our answer to that one. I was actually hoping here, since we've got some Helm 3 proposals, we could actually walk through them really quickly. I'll share my screen. I'm gonna try and keep us moving along because we've only got 15 minutes left. So. Let me know when you can see my screen. All right, so there's a few, there's actually 3 PRs that have to do with Helm 3, and I figure we can start with maybe the easiest and just work our way down. There's a new one here from Michelle that is actually about installing custom plugin sets. So the gist of it is, it's actually pretty short, is to have the ability to have a predefined set of plugins and then install that set of plugins. So here's what the file looks like. And so you could actually have a file that lists your plugins, and then at install time, you could pass in a file and it would install those. My current comments on it are more or less, how do we deal with version handling in the current plugin setup, and then just init. But the overall direction of having custom plugins, did anybody have any comments on this?
Does 2 enthusiastic thumbs up count as a comment on this?
Does anyone have any ideas? That's a great comment, actually. Does anybody have any ideas on how we would do version handling for this?
I think we'd have to do version ranging, but the question then is, if a plugin is installed, do we even allow it to be updated outside of its version range, right?
Well, okay, maybe I'm just going to suggest that maybe this is stupid to do, but what if we just stick with it, making it super simple? Maybe we can iterate on it later and give it version ranges, but what if you just have to give it the exact version?
Well,
End of
that's-
story.
Here's my question. How do we discover the version? So these things live off in a third-party location. You've got to go fetch, right?
Yes.
How do we discover the version and say, oh, the current tip of master version that's right there isn't the right version? How do we go backwards and go try to discover the versions?
I would say, well, I don't know. Never mind. My idea is stupid. I'm just going to shut up.
I don't know. So that's the thing that I would be curious on with this proposal. I'm not actually sure how to look at things that are outside the tip of master.
I think I would be in favor of removing version, because version is going to actually add several problems. Like, if I declare version in my plugins file, am I allowed to go update it on disk? If I declare a version and a version is no longer there, do I fail installing all the plugins or only that one plugin? You know, there are all kinds of things that would come up there that might be tricky. It might be easier to, for a first go, following Taylor's advice, make it simpler first, and then if we need to add version support later, do that.
Okay.
So you're just saying, like, just have the download URL in there and that's it? Okay.
And just default would be fetch whatever is at that URL.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of my thing, was I didn't know how. Maybe somebody wants to. Matt, can you jump in and suggest it? So it's not me reiterating your words.
And then later you can add version and be backwards compatible, right? Because it would just supersede the URL.
Mm-hmm. All right. The next one, to keep us moving along here, is Helm v2 repositories. This one might take a longer read, but I wanted to call attention to it because it introduces the idea of two files. One is your index. And for those of you who've read the indexes, your API version changes to v2. Your entries are similar. They have your thing, and here's the example of Artifactory. But instead of having the different versions underneath it, you have a reference to a file that can have all of the version information. And that reference can either be an absolute URL or it can be relative to the index location. And then you have that information for the latest one, right? It's that object, and it's just the latest. Here's the current information for the latest. So that way you've got the information for things like Helm search and stuff like that, but it's only got the latest. And then there's a separate file for each chart that, again, it's API version 2 because it's for the whole spec, and then it has the versions. And this is, again, similar to the entries, except of being an array, you have an object with the version as the key, and then, again, the full list of stuff for that version as the value. And you'll see here there's two versions as an example. Oh, here's the second version as the example. Let me actually go pull up something that's not a diff. This is kind of the direction that I went with, was the two file approach. And so it's broken up into multiple files. That's kind of the direction. The idea here, again, and it's all JavaScript rather than YAML. The idea was all performance-based because that's kind of a problem with our large YAML files. and then we can lazily fetch as we need the individual chart JSON files. Right, we can lazily check those, and if we're smart, we can even, pass if modified since, or if it doesn't match, and use e tags and things like that to be really smart about how we fetch this stuff. So we only fetch what we need, and only every so often. Any thoughts on this direction?
If you allow a relative URL in the master index file, don't you lose the contexts to recover the full URL? Where do you get the base URL that you append the relative URL to?
You would need to capture that when you go fetch the index file.
I don't understand the question.
You don't understand the question? So in up here, you've got ref here, right? Imagine this only had /artifactory.json on it.
Right, yeah.
Didn't have the whole thing. Now you're going to go fetch that. How do you know where to fetch it from? How do you know what the domain is, what the root of it is?
I mean, the downside to allowing the relative one is if I ever change the URL of the top level repo, then the cached one could be wrong, but a Helm repo up would fix that, right? So maybe that's not a big deal.
Yeah, and part of this is when you currently generate things using, when Helm generates your repository, it doesn't know the URL it's going to do it at. Right? Because then you can just go stick it in a bucket and it doesn't matter. This allows for that capability to still be the case. So we capture less information. It also allows you, if you've got it at more than one URL, HTTP and HTTPS version of it, that the relative nature will work and it'll be the same protocol. Things of that nature. That's what I was looking at. The absolute I actually thought of as being maybe a little more interesting, like with the distributed search. Maybe we point back to these files in their home locations, while the distributed search only presents the top level index, because you could even have different domains.
Yeah. And then are we assuming that we're going to hoist info like keywords and maintainers and sources from the current stable version into the top level one, or are we going to control those as separate?
So the way I did it is you're going to actually notice the latest object here is exactly what's already presented today for a version. And this exact object and structure here that's the latest is also each one of these, the same exact object. And it's also the same one that exists today. I was doing this for kind of compatibility and ease of working with the code, trying to keep the actual data sources simpler, because that means internally in any tools that work with it, going cross versions is a little bit easier because it's still the same structure and objects internally.
So if I have 5.3.0-alpha.1 and 5.2.0, which one's latest?
Wait,
5.3 alpha 1 versus 5.2. In other words, is a dev release considered latest?
Well, isn't it up to the person who's providing the file to say?
Yeah, but we need a
latest
same
is
default. If somebody's going to do it, what do they do? Right? Because this is very much about sane defaults.
Or should it be stable?
Yeah, stable sounds better.
Or
I would argue that stable, that anything alpha or beta or pre-release is not considered. So it's the latest stable. And
In which case, might we want to change it from latest to stable in the top level?
sure.
Matt, yeah, I think this looks really good. I mean, this is exactly what Inkush presented on at the summit. So
Yeah, I agree. I'm totally enthusiastic about this.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm trying to keep it, do you think latest to stable, or should we say latest stable? Or is that too verbose?
it's clear.
I think just one or the other. I don't know.
Okay. There we go. And we can add documentation to say it's the latest stable. All right, because you can easily navigate the object to, get the thing of, you go to entries, artifactory, late or stable, and then keywords, and you can just get to those for the latest one, right? It's an easy way to go display those things, and yet it's all still the same objects we have today. All right. Back up to pull requests. Then there was the improved signing. Matt, you've had this one out for a while. Did you want to talk to it? Are we still going after this one?
I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember this one. Can you show me what it is?
All right. So you're well, here, I'll bring in the diff.
Oh yeah. So this was in an effort to make the whole signing process a default instead of an add-on. The proposal is basically that that we would generate PGP keys for you. That would be your default signing keys, and automatically sign charts with Helm package. That you would have to turn off that behavior instead of turning it on. And then also that in repo index files, we would start adding in the keys of people who are signing authorities for that repo, so that you could verify. So basically, move one step closer toward making verification a built-in part of the Helm package repo management. This would actually add a functional difference to the difference between running a package repo and installing things straight off of a Git repo, for example, because the package repos would default towards signing packages. So the main thing that needs to be sort of audited in this proposal is whether or not storing the public signing keys in the index file would be decent enough security-wise. I mean, since there's the allowance of storing the index file in a different place from the actual signed charts, the people who are super concerned that if one is compromised, the other is compromised, well, you can actually solve that problem by differentiating instead of hosting the two. And I'll probably have to retrofit this based on your previous proposal. But that's the basic idea.
Yeah, so I think Matt Farina had a comment that we just looked at on the screen. But how do you, in an environment where, for example, you're starting with a clean workspace and run Helm init every time, the key is going to be different. How do you resolve that?
Yeah, so my theory is that those sorts of cases are the cases where you would want to bring your key with you when you went from
Right.
under the CI system, for example, because otherwise it will be signed, and it will be signed by somebody, but the somebody that signed it is too ephemeral for anybody to validate, right? So.
But in every CI run then, if you're generating new keys, then those get merged into the keys. You're going to end up with a whole lot of keys in the file.
No, so Helm init would only generate a new key if you didn't provide it with one. Maybe
So you'd have to provide it every time, yeah.
So yeah, so if there was already a key there, or if you do Helm init -- import key or something like that, then it would, because ideally you would want to, the key should persist. The intention with creating one by default was just to smooth out the instances where people are installing Helm and then they go, oh, now I need OpenPGP or GNU PG or something like that, and they never get around to signing things, which is probably almost 95% or plus of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I don't. Okay. I'd like to maybe see keys broken into a separate file. But then again, if we're always doing it, it kind of depends. I don't know. The always doing it in CI is where I'm tentative on, because now it means Helm has a dependency on basically GPG being there, right? Or are we going to have everything built into Helm that does the signing and creates the keys and all that?
Yeah, because Go already has the
Okay.
necessary crypto stuff. In fact, it's already in Helm today.
Okay.
What was the, there was some pushback in the comments, Jimmy and someone else.
Adnan had some ideas.
If you go back to the, like, the whole thread.
Comments, yeah. Oh, he was talking about because images aren't signed. And quite often the images aren't signed. So only one of the things would be signed. And so it has to do with ideas around that. So how about this? Because there's ideas and thoughts, and we could probably discuss this for a while. Can folks go poke at this issue and give their 2 cents and think about it? By the way, images can be signed. In fact, there's a CNCF project around signing images, but dig into that. All right, what else did we have here? Because I know we're already over. We can punt this one.
I have a quick question. What is our official story for people asking about Helm 3.0 timeline, other than when it's ready? I mean, what should I be telling people that ask me relentlessly?
My answer has been that we're still in the early phases of Helm 3, so we're not comfortable giving a timeline, but that we hope to have some stuff to show by the end of the year.
Okay.
In other words, we want to be able to demo by KubeCon. Might not be done, but we'd like to be able to demo something by KubeCon.
That'd be cool. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, that's kind of the same tact I take. I say, well, I can't guarantee anything because it's really early, but if I were to take a stab, hopefully end of year-ish, beginning of next year, we'll see. That's like how I do it.
All right. We're already over time, so I'm going to do a little time check here. We need to do some assignments. So we need It's just Sherpa, notes, and moderator for next week.
I can Sherpa.
I can moderate next week.
All right. Do we have anybody for? Oh, wait. We had Sherpa. Do we have anybody for notes?
I can do notes.
All right. I would have volunteered, but I won't be here. All right. Thank you for doing notes all the time, Nikhil. You've been doing a wonderful job lately.
Oh, no worries. I'm more than happy to do it.
All right. So that's what we've got. And I guess we'll punt stale issue 2. Thanks, everyone, for a wonderful meeting, and have a great week.
Have a good vacation, man.
Yeah, thanks.
See y'all. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, guys. See ya.